So, we live in a world where learning is free for a lot of things now, and the ability to learn how to learn is one of the skills that can boost your overall productivity and basically applies to everything you do in life. And even though I don't have that much exams anymore, I still have to learn tons of new things every day. I'm learning to cook and eat healthier and better meals, I learn how to lift weights to progress over time and also avoid injuries too, and I even try to get better at making these YouTube videos. Alright, so in this video I'm gonna share 7 tips that make me an effective learner in life that are science-based too, so that we can learn anything we want. Alright, so tip number 1 is to sharpen your axe. And this is actually from a quote attributed to Abraham Lincoln, who said, "If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 6 hours sharpening my axe." And this says everything about the power of learning how to learn, and this can be applied in every areas of our life, like improving or getting new knowledge and ideas, practicing a skill, and improving our physical and mental health. So, for example, athletes often spend months or even years getting themselves better and ready for competitions that are only a few days or minutes long, by sharpening their physical and mental skills. And as a student, I was sharpening my educational skills by attending classes, getting into study groups, and also reading and practicing before the exam dates. So yeah, investing your time and effort too to then become better and well prepared will allow you to learn more efficiently. Which brings us to tip number 2, which is to focus on the fundamentals, or in other words, mastering the basic building blocks of a subject or skill to develop strong understandings and foundations. And you can think of it as a deck of cards that shape the pyramid. This structure only works because of the center of gravity and stability. So the base provides a stable foundation for the structure above to support the smaller triangular shapes, while each layer is becoming progressively smaller as the pyramid is built upwards. And if you touch its foundation, then the center of gravity will shift outside of its base, and it's game over. The same thing can be applied to learning. So for instance, you can learn 80% of English by memorizing only the first 2,000 most used words. Or what if you wanted to write a story? You first need to understand how to structure it in a way that makes sense. Your story cannot start by the end, you have to order it somewhere. In photography, you first need to understand and learn about composition and the shutter speed, ISO, aperture, triangle to make the most out of your camera. Alright, so tip number 3 is build a system. So this is like a routine, but for learning. So you stick to a plan consistently to boost your overall attention and also focus. For that, you have the Pomodoro technique, which consists of taking 5-minute breaks every 25 minutes of deep work. So here is how it works. Step 1, pick a task. Step 2, set a 25-minute timer. Step 3, work on your task and only on your selected task. Try to remove distractions like notifications and also ambient noisy sounds. Step 4, take a 5-minute break. Do whatever you want, like drinking some water, watching or reading something you can easily enjoy. And step 5, repeat the last 4 steps again. So this can give you roughly 2.5 hours of deep work with only a 40-minute break. Not bad, right? I simply use the built-in Windows feature on the bottom right corner of Windows 11. You can also find it in the clock app. And you can choose your working time from a few minutes to hours depending on your schedule and simply the amount of work you are willing to do. It will automatically set the focus and break periods for you, so you don't have to keep your phone next to you all the time to check and set the clock. I also frequently use the 5-minute rule when I don't feel like I want to do the work. I simply sit down at my desk and start to work on my projects. And most of the time you will find that you can and also want to keep working because you already gave yourself this initial momentum. Tip number 4 is to make it pop. So, what does it mean? Often our brain will eventually forget what he just read, simply because reading some lines on a white page or your screen is not efficient enough in that time frame. Of course, you can learn anything you want just by reading again and again the text you're trying to learn for decades. But there is a much more simple and fast-forward solution for the long term. You should use a portion of your time to make the things you're trying to learn more appealing to your eyes by making visual. And this one word alone says everything, so you can create some graphs to explain an idea, story, etc. You can also create bullet points to summarize a long text and use the Kanban board to follow your projects, lessons, and so on. And the Kanban board is especially useful as it visually depicts work at various stages of a process, using cards to represent work items and columns to represent each stage of a process. And I use it to keep track of my whole video workflow, from the idea to the published stage, but you can use it whenever and however you want. And studies have shown that visuals are processed 60,000 times faster than text. text, and there's only one simple reason to explain it. When reading text, our brain has to look at one word at a time to analyze its meaning, and then it repeats the process over and over again with each word, and sometimes thousands of sentences explain only one concept that can be easily drawn visually. For example, instead of writing down the description of how the SpaceX Starship works, you can take a piece of paper and draw it to write down only the essential parts to understand the concept. Alright, so tip number 5 is to actually test yourself. So counterintuitively, learning is not about putting lots of stuff in our brain, but it's putting stuff out of our brain. So you might have heard about the learning pyramid, which can be broken down into first, passive learning. So simple lecture, reading, and see some audio and visuals feedback. Passive learning is everything around putting stuff inside of our brain, from capturing the information in books, videos, teachers, or podcasts, and trying to store them and remember them in the long term. And this has a 30% retention rate. We then have the active learning, so everything around discussion, practicing, and teaching others. And this has a 75% retention rate, so much higher than passive learning, because we try to put stuff out of our brain, which will reinforce the learning process. And explaining what we learned to someone else is by far the single best way to effectively remember what we've learned, with a 90% retention rate. You can also try the Feynman method, which is a way of learning that involves explaining things in a very simple way, so that even a 5-year-old can understand it. And technically, if you get stuck on a difficult concept, it also means that you don't really understand it yourself, so you need to go back and learn more until you can explain it in simple terms. So you can use the Feynman method to better understand complex ideas and remember them more easily. I see it as a helpful way to learn more about things that might seem difficult at first. For example, how does an airplane fly, and why does it fly? Now imagine that you have a paper plane and you throw it across the room. It goes up and starts to fall towards the ground, right? This happens because of something called gravity, which pulls everything towards the center of the Earth. Now, think that you have a fan blowing air upwards. The plane rises up into the air, and that is because the fan is creating something called lift, which is a force that pushes things up into the air. Planes have a special wings that are shaped kind of like a bird's wing. When the plane moves through the air, the shape of the wing creates lift, just like the fan blowing air upwards. And the faster the plane goes, the more lift it creates. This is why planes have to go really fast in order to take off and stay in the air. So there you have it, the basics of how planes fly explained using the Feynman method. By breaking down complex ideas into simpler concepts, we can better understand the most difficult things. My tip number 6 is to do only one thing at a time, or in other words, monotasking. So that speaks for itself. Monotasking is simply focusing on one task at a time, while monotasking is trying to focus on multiple tasks in the same time frame. We usually think that we are good at multitasking, that we do more in less time, but this is more wrong than anything else. We are just switching between multiple tasks while slowly losing focus on what truly mattered. So the simple answer is doing only one task fully for 1 hour, maybe 2, without any distractions. And most of the time I will just switch my phone notifications off and throw it on my bed or on the ground, at least far from me. Finally, tip number 7 is to repeat again and again and again the skill or subject you're trying to learn. There is a common belief that it takes around 10,000 hours of practice to master and be good at anything, right? But studies have proven that this isn't quite true, and this is the way our brains are supposed to work. So the more we do something, the more important it becomes, and the stronger it stays in our memory for the long term. Technically, learning reinforces the neural network in our brain that are responsible for encoding and retrieving information. As you can see, reviewing something you previously learned will allow you to keep it in your memory longer, until it gets to the long-term part of your brain. For example, if you are studying for a history exam, you might repeat key dates, events, and names until you can recall them easily. Also, remember to keep spacing too. It is important to take regular breaks to avoid burnout and also help your brain process the information you are learning. Taking a break can help you stay focused and improve your overall retention. For example, you can take a few days break, a nap, or wait for your 8 hours of daily sleep before learning again. You simply can't go to the gym each day, or you might get injuries and diminishing returns over time. You have to keep a constant spacing between your learning sessions to make the most out of your brain. And above all, remember that learning is hard. It is made to be that way. Even using all of these tips and tricks cannot make learning too easy. Sometimes we have to unlearn something in order to learn it in a different way, or start again with the fundamentals of a subject. It can be frustrating or demotivating sometimes, but most of the time we always figure that out and keep getting better and better no matter what we do in life. And if you have enjoyed this video and this science-based studies behind it, then you will probably like this one right there, where I talk about how to read everything faster while still remembering everything. And you might like this video right here, where I explain how I plan to grow my YouTube channel for the next few years and how you can follow along. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, I will see you in the next one.